Today on the Basketball Manitoba Podcast, we have Jon Giesbrecht, a coach who's built a career around player development, the mental game, and helping athletes play free. He started coaching at 15 when he stepped in to coach his younger brother's team, and he hasn't stopped since. He's coached many of those same players to a JV provincial championship and an undefeated grade 12 season at John Taylor Collegiate, where he was co-coach of the program, with many of those same players going on to play university basketball. He's coached at the provincial team level, winning a gold medal as an assistant coach with the U17 boys team. He's also worked with Canada Basketball as a video coordinator for the Canadian junior men's national team. He coached with the University of Winnipeg, University of Manitoba, including 2 seasons as a full-time assistant with the University of Regina women's program. He moved on from the college level and went on to coach prep in Italy as the director of mental performance. The last 2 seasons, he was with the Vancouver Bandits as the director of mental skills and performance. He also runs a private practice called Play Free, where he teaches athletes how to handle pressure, regulate emotions, and perform when it matters. Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
I know, man. This is a long time coming. You and I go way back. You're one of my homies. I've seen you come up since when you were 15. That's the cool part, is I've literally seen you grow, and now we're like friends. So for me, this is an exciting moment to have you on.
Yeah, many years. I remember sneaking into the Basketball Manitoba office and visiting with Dan and Adam, and then seeing you. Yeah, it's crazy to see how time has kind of flown by, and we're all where we are now.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. So I got to start with this, brother. So, people know what a basketball coach is, right? Oh, like you coach basketball, that's great. They understand that at all levels, essentially. They may not know the details of it, but they understand it, right? But if someone meets you for the first time and they ask you like, hey, man, what do you do? What do you say now? And maybe you could talk to me a bit about how that answer's changed over the years.
Yeah, I met with our GM and head coach on Monday of this week, and he had someone ask him that, what is this guy, Jon, what does he do? He says, well, I leave that up to Jon, Jon does it, so he didn't necessarily have like some kind of, fancy description. And then at the same time, maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe every week, I'd even say is like, wow, like, man, it's crazy how I was on the court every day. And now I'm doing what I'm doing now. Like it's just like a different world. But what I'd say is it's meeting athletes where they are, getting to know them, getting to know what their strengths are, their non-strengths, and working with them to make, let's say, flow or high performance more accessible, more regular, more consistent. It's not always necessarily someone needs to be totally shaky or bleeding out with their game to see me. You can see me when you're neutral and you're just feeling like you need to get to that next level. A lot of times though, as you've experienced, I'm sure with your business, a lot of times people have to kind of be at that, not necessarily rock bottom, but a low point to actually say, all right, I'm in so much pain. I need to get back to myself. I need to get back to playing free. So Jon's business is called Playing Free. I'll check him out and we'll have a conversation, and then, go into mindfulness, go into mental performance, giving them some tools that they can harness and lean into.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. I mean, like I said, at the start, I've seen you go through this whole journey, which has been like really, really cool from an outside perspective, and to see a friend kind of, go through these things. And it's kind of crazy, man, to be fair. Like, I watch you, and, we're going to get into your story like later, is when you first started, but it's very rare that you get to see somebody kind of go through this, like, that isn't like your child or something, or your brother, grow up, man, but then also get to this point where you're doing like the coolest stuff. And I have a close relationship with mindfulness and like meditation and things like that. And so, to see you take that on and then translate all these different modalities into like something that can really help people because you've gone through it and you're experiencing it and you're learning it. It's like really cool. But I want to ask you this, like in your experience up to this point, what is something that most people misunderstand about mental performance in basketball? Like, what's a common thing that people are like making a mistake that they don't understand exactly what mental performance is?
Yeah, I think it's what I was hinting at before. Like, there's kind of a joke sometimes in our locker room. So with the Vancouver Bandits, I'll walk into the room and let's say one of the younger players, like, 18, 19 years old, maybe one of the U Sports guys that was drafted to be with our team for the summer. And one of the vets might say, you're slipping up, it's time to go see John. So it's kind of like this thing where you got to be, messing up or struggling
Yeah.
or all right, get your stuff together, start to get a little bit more disciplined, and now you're going to go see somebody.
Huh.
So I'd say just generally mental performance is seen from my experience as okay, there's something broken, now we need to fix it. And the conversation that I continue to have and the message that I say on social media is that nothing's broken, but you can be more skillful in your approach to this
Yes.
situation. You don't have to keep running through the wall. There's many ways to go about it. You can go over the wall, you can dig underneath it, you can decide to turn back and go home. You can take a step to the left and walk around the wall. Like there's many different ways. And
Yeah.
it's as I was saying earlier, meeting someone where they're at and seeing what works for them because everybody's unique. Everybody has something that can get them to their next level. And
Mhm.
a lot of times when you're a part of it and you're in it every day, you're ignorant to these things that will help you. So when you have a guide on the side like myself, I can facilitate that process and help give you the perspective to see that you have options.
Mhm. Yeah. So the biggest thing I heard with that, and like it's like you said at the start, is what you're maybe even trying to change in this world is a lot to do with the fact that everyone understands like if I take care of my body, if I train, if I, now at this stage, if I recover properly, I will do better. You don't have to be injured to train. You can train when you're healthy, right? You don't have to be, you could be able to dunk and still want to increase your vertical or increase your capacity to do certain things, right? And so what you're really saying is that a lot of people think you have to be quote unquote injured, if I was using a physical example, to actually build your body up. But you're saying you don't have to be in the actual dirt to work on your mental performance. It's something that you can do and improve on regardless of where you're at.
Mhm. Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and and the high level guys get to a point where they realize that it's not just no longer just physical.
Yeah.
There's something mental to this. I had a guy the other day saying, I understand, I know how to train. I've got this down to a science and I've seen it, but the mental game just seems so complex for me. I don't know
Mhm.
where to start. So it's can we make it easy enough where you just start to see that you're taking steps
Yeah.
and that's a good place to start, and now I bite off these small chunks. All right, I can start to build my capacity to take on more, to see it in a different way, as I was saying.
Yeah. 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 I love that. I love it. What's up? What's something that, you've been in this game now, and I'm sure you've learned a lot. Your beliefs and changes,
Mhm.
our beliefs have changed quite a bit. What's a coaching belief that you had 10 years ago that you'd argue against today?
Yeah, so when I was running practices at John Taylor, we had a bunch of kids come through there, really, smart kids, kids that really cared about being in the gym, and it was a really special experience for me to work with all those players. But when I was coaching, I was just a hard ass. I was
Mm,
really, pushing guys. I remember listening to the podcast you did with Randy Casano, and he was saying, the biggest lesson is, I was trying to be,
mm,
something I wasn't, or I was trying to emulate someone.
yeah,
And I think that's a big thing that I was doing in the beginning. And I was pushing, 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 and believing like, all right, I'm going to make these practices so hard that my players are going to be able to go into any situation and figure it out because I've pushed them. And
Mm,
what I've learned with mental performance, studying psychology, understanding that there's a rhythm, and I call it pendulation. So it's this idea that you can go into stress and activation, but at the same point, there needs to be recovery. There needs to be safety. There needs to be connection. So for me, I was putting these kids into like this threat state again and again and again.
mm,
And I wasn't cultivating, okay, let's relax, let's breathe, because
mm.
that trains your brain that I can experience fear. I can experience being uncertain about what's going to happen. And then I'm going to be okay. And I was missing that piece. So if I were to go back, I think my practices were really good because we competed at a high level, but we never really slowed it down. We didn't really
Mm.
debrief. Those pieces were missing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting because I feel like you can do that for some period of time, but you will run into diminishing returns that like you're going to hit that breaking point and then everything could collapse. So like you said, if there's that pendulum, you do it and then if you have the eye for it or it's in your plan, you can realize when to kind of bring them back. But I mean, high school kids, young season, the young kids, you could probably just push, 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 but that's not sustainable. Is essentially it's a short-term strategy that could be successful in the short term, but not as a long-term strategy.
And what's the outcome that we're looking for here? The
Mm.
outcome is ultimately to help these athletes perform at a higher level when it matters and ultimately use basketball. As you said, I remember you said it maybe 10 years ago. I read it on your elite website when you're running that elite club. You
Let's
said,
go.
I think you said, using basketball as a vehicle, and that's what we're
Mhm.
doing. So we're developing this resilience in your nervous system that, all right, I can
Yeah.
feel fear and I
Hmm.
can be okay.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Basketball is a vehicle, man. That's like, you know, in its best and it's in its worst, I think just overall, it's truly that like those experience, at least I'm speaking from a personal standpoint. I've heard other people say this over and over, like the experiences that you have within like a specific game in a season, training, attaining new skills, putting in the work, those things just, they apply like to everything. And I think like the thing that is missing a lot of the times is this mental side of it, because everything you're saying with the mental side is the same with the physical side. And those things I don't think are separate from one another, right? If you're physically fatigued, like there's going to be a physiological component to that. And so they do need to work together. And throwback or shout out to my high school coach, Manoj Naring. Like I didn't know it at the time. And he was no expert in these things, but he'd learn something and he'd apply it to us. So we'd be doing these agilities and like cool physical things. But I remember being on the bus one time and we were at a tournament. I think it was like the Luther or something like that. I don't remember what it was, Brandon something. And we're all just in high school talking and being wild. And then he kind of got us to all, calm down. And we did a whole visualization. It was crazy, right? I'd never done anything like that. And, I don't know what effect it had. It wasn't something that we did all the time, but shout out to him because he was doing some of these things. And, I remember it. I don't remember a lot of things. I'm 43 years old and I remember that moment. So it clearly was impactful, right? But in saying all that, brother, I actually want to zoom in on you a little bit and talk about you and your first introduction to basketball, man. Like, what are some of your first basketball memories? Who introduced you to the game? When did you start playing it or getting involved in it?
Yeah, my first memories, probably one of my real positive memories was getting to be coached by Spiros Kavadas at John Taylor.
Hmm.
Um, when I was in grade nine, my grandma passed away, and we were really close. And I don't think he even knows this, but you know, I decided not to play, and I had loved basketball. Playing all the time, grade five, grade six, grade seven. All the time outside, as much basketball as I could. And in grade nine, I'm like, you know what? Doesn't matter anymore. I took a year off. I remember like dribbling in my basement, still kind of playing. And then Spiros ended up, moving to John Taylor, and he was the JV coach. And I wasn't with the team, but I was, playing in the open gyms and, with the grade 12s, grade 11s, and just hanging out. and sometimes the gym would be open and I'd sneak in. And I remember one time Spiros was just pacing the sidelines, just pacing, just looking over his shoulder, and then he'd pace back.
Yeah,
And I'm like, who is this guy? He looks kind of strange.
yeah.
And eventually after 10 minutes of kind of watching me shoot by myself, I was like, oh, he came over and he's asking about me, and he just took special interest in me, and I felt like that was something that helped me kind of love the game again. Having someone that believed in me and wanted to talk to me. So that was really positive. And then from there, Coach Cavadas coached me all the way through, so grade 11, grade 12, and I thought he really gave me a really good foundation, in terms of understanding spacing and defensive positioning and timing. He really good teacher of the game, and at the same time, like he kind of inspired me to get into coaching. And from there, as I was in high school, even I was coaching my younger brother's team,
Mhm.
and that kind of just helped me find my voice. I was pretty quiet and introverted, and being able to be on the sidelines and project my voice, that was really big for my confidence. So I had like just these really good experiences in high school. And it got to the point, and Spiros is really honest with me. He's like, I don't know if you're going to be able to play after, because at that time I was just, I had no idea what I was talking about. Oh, yeah, I'll be a CIS player or a U Sports player.
Mhm.
I wasn't good enough to do that. But, he was honest in a nice way, and he just kept pushing the coaching. And then I was like, all right, cool. So I had ended up graduating from high school, and then I was going to go to school to be a teacher. So I went to University of Winnipeg, and one of my real, an amazing interaction that I had was with Dan Becker. And at the time, my brother and his group of friends, James Wagner, Josh Gandier, really higher level kids in the community playing with the provincial teams, eventually playing U Sports, but they were all young and they were trying to you know, play in this program called the Center of Performance.
Mm.
And at the same time, Dan had put out this announcement like, "Hey, we're also looking for apprentice coaches to, join our program and start coaching. We want to develop some coaches." So I was like, "Oh man, like this is gonna be amazing. This is what my life's gonna be about. I'm gonna be this coach, and this is it. This is the pathway." So I had this like story built up in my mind, and I did an interview with Dan, and he was asking me like questions like, "What's your philosophy? Like, what do you believe in?" And I didn't even know what philosophy, like what
Ah,
the word even meant. I'm like, "What do you mean philosophy?" So I didn't get it. I didn't get the job,
yeah.
and I was crushed. I remember he called me maybe or emailed me or whatever, and I was crying and I was so upset, devastated, because like I'm like, this is my life. Like I'm not playing anymore. I'm gonna coach. So I didn't get it. And then I was like, all right, I'm gonna use this. And I just got really pissed. And I'm gonna show everybody that I'm a really good coach. So then I kind of tried to like prove people wrong,
Mm.
and that was good for me because I really developed a fire, studying the game. Um, you know, we ended up winning like multiple provincial championships, as you mentioned, at John
Mhm.
Taylor. And then eventually, I think through my persistence and patience, Dan really respected that, and then ended up involving me anyway. I ended up coaching with him on the provincial team, and we won a
Yeah.
national championship together. And funny enough, I hadn't talked to Dan in maybe since the summertime of last year, and he called me today. He called me this morning,
No
and
way.
we had a really nice conversation. So like he's been a huge mentor for me. Always looking out for me, always giving me insights, and also calling me out, like things that maybe I didn't handle it the right way, and he'd tell me that maybe wasn't the best decision, or consider doing it this way. And so I've always really appreciated that it's not just being a yes man. It's, hey, this is
Mm.
I need to call you up for a second, and we need to have a conversation about this. So Dan's really helped elevate me and made me more professional. How I carry myself. When I enter the space, like when I entered to speak with Kyle Julius with the Vancouver Bandits, a lot of that I was prepared because of Dan. Like this is how you carry yourself. And even though now, I have the long hair, and in some settings this might not be the most professional way, but speaking with integrity, he'd
Mm-hmm.
always tell me, he'd always say, it's better to over deliver than over promise.
Mm-hmm.
So deliver. If you say you're going to do things, deliver. And
Mm-hmm.
and so
Boys, I guess they're quite proud of them.
Basketball is more than a scoreboard. It's history. That's why you'll find the Manitoba Basketball Hall of Fame and Museum, the only permanent basketball Hall of Fame in Canada. The Manitoba Basketball Hall of Fame and Museum honors the players, teams, and leaders who shaped the game on and off the floor. Free to visit, shaped in legacy. Find out more at mbhof.com.
and then also at the same time, there's coaches like Kirby Shep. When I got to work with Kirby Shep, he was really big in terms of helping me understand the game at an even deeper level. The
Yeah.
spacing, the execution, and at the same time empowering me and respecting me. And if at halftime I'd be able to speak to him, he just saw the good in me. And then Mike Rainbow, same thing when I went to U of W. Just really would have conversations with me in his office, and another person, like there's so I could go on for hours. Like another person, Dave Crook. I used to hang out in Dave Crook's office. We probably meet 2 or 3 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
for an hour and a half, 2 hours every week when I was in university. And we would just talk the game again and again and again. Another person I was thinking about today, Mike Wanchuk
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
Strive. I think Mike's always been ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mike,
Yep.
Mike was teaching me about the nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic
Yes.
nervous system, and at the
Yep.
time, I wasn't even giving it the light of day. I was like, yeah, 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 whatever. And now I talk about it almost every day, and that was like
Uh-huh.
more than 10 years ago at this point. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, shout out to Mike at Strive. I
Yeah.
really
I
taught me a
was I
lot.
was not expecting a Michael Onchuk, but absolutely, he's taught me that way back then too. Like I remember. Yeah. Very cool.
Little tidbits, like just on top of things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
What is so? I mean, you mentioned like just a whole bunch of essentially mentors, man. Like you started with Spiros, you went on to Dan, and you mentioned a whole list of people. Um, you talked even about the podcast with Coach Chisano, and it's chopping it up with Coach Crook, who we got to coach. If anyone knows Coach, we got to get him on the podcast. He's on our list. But who are some of the other mentors that have been in this journey? Because like obviously you've kind of went through all these Manitoba, impactful Manitoba people. Tell me more about just some of those mentors and some of the things that they've taught you up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, there's, I feel bad because there's probably going to be people I list off, I don't name, but
Hmm.
um, a big one, like probably the one people ask me about quite a bit is Coach Raveling. Coach Raveling was in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and I should say late George Raveling. He passed away this past year, but he's somebody that kind of blew my mind in that I saw him. He had a DVD coaching clinic on the bench, like organization of your bench, like. And I'm like, man, nobody's talking about this. I'm watching like
Yeah.
hundreds of DVDs. Nobody's talking about that. So I ended up writing him an email and saying, I really appreciate you and what you're doing for the game and how you're helping people. And this is really helpful to me. And I hope you're doing good. And he kind of just hit me right back. He said, if there's anything that I can do, let me know. And I'm like, man, a lot of people say that. So I kind of just, you know, all right, let's see if he follows through. I said, I want to meet you. And it just kind of, he said, all right, let's do it. I'm in Los Angeles. So I ended up flying out to Los Angeles, and I got to just, I didn't know what to expect, but I got to the hotel, and he ended up coming and picking me up at the hotel. And then he just kind of took me all over. He took me, to the library. We went to go eat at multiple places, and we did this over maybe two or 3 days. And it was amazing. So I just kept going to Los Angeles probably every 3, 4 months, um, to the point where I got to go to the LA Clippers practice, and I got to meet Doc Rivers. And Doc was somebody that I had been connected to. I kind of lost contact because I don't do as much. I used to do basketball edits, and I'd stay connected that way. But I got to meet him, and I had so many different people. Uh, I got connected with so many cool people because of Coach Raveling. But
Mhm.
it was just that situation. It's like I don't think I can really do much for him. But he said I just appreciated that. You always brought your notebook. You were always writing notes. You were always so curious, asking questions. For me, that's really valuable because I'm just trying to, stay on top of things and stay sharp. He's
Mhm.
like 80, the time he was like 81 years old, so he's like, it's really cool to be able to hang with younger people and just stay in the loop. So, that's one of the reasons. But yeah, I got to go to the Pan American Games in Toronto and, hang out with their Nike team and do a lot of cool things like that. And yeah, just blown away with his generosity.
Mhm.
Like, who am I? Like, I can't do anything for you. Um, at the time I was like 21 years old. Like, but the patience and what he was able to teach me in that time, even reading, like how much I read now, like over my right shoulder, you can say I got a bunch of books here, I got a bunch of books in Winnipeg. I wasn't a great student, but he was someone that continued to facilitate. Like, there's more within you. You got a
Mhm.
lot more than you're showing. And yeah, so yeah, I think the power of mentors is important because I think a lot of times, sometimes you think you can do this by yourself, and it's not true. Like, even you, like, you've been a huge mentor for me the last couple years, especially with my business and where it's going, and always having my back, always checking in. Sometimes when I'm not the greatest at getting back to you, you're always there, and I think, man, I think those are the kind of relationships that you want to just continue to seek out or be open to, people that
Mhm.
push you and challenge you.
Mhm. Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing all that, man. Like, obviously, I knew this, but I really wanted you to share because I started off the podcast and I literally said, "Man, I've seen you. Like, I've seen this whole thing." But you said it, which is a common theme on everyone I talk to, is this is not something that's done alone, right? And there's a community element. I think Kirby said this, a whole bunch of people said this. Like, the sooner you realize that the game of basketball is just a human game, like many of the other games, pretty much every game we play is a human game. This one being the absolute human game. This is when you start winning, quote unquote, not necessarily games, but you win in the game, right? And you've essentially said that in so many ways. It's like through making these connections, and you've been able to win. You know what I mean? Where you feel like, wow, like this is such a fulfilling experience. I want to ask you this though, brother. Like, have you had people reach out to you and say, "Hey, John, like, you know," and in that kind of like where you're now the mentor? I know you're not that old. You're still like a young buck compared to like, older coaches, but have you had that happen yet?
Yeah, almost too much. Yeah, like with Instagram,
Yeah.
my Instagram's growing fast,
Yeah.
and I'm really thankful and grateful for it. Sometimes it gets a little overwhelming with people like, oh, well, what would you recommend to do next? Or do you have any
Hmm.
advice on this? And my thing is I just try to make the videos to help
Mm.
people, and I don't always get back to everybody. But yeah, I think it's just knowing that, the more you give, the more you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
You taught me
Yeah.
that, Coach Ravling's taught me that, if I just keep doing my best to share, the right opportunities, the right kind of people
Hmm.
will keep coming into my life.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's super, super, super true, man. I love that. I want to, now that you're to many, you're an expert. If I call you an expert, you might be like, nah, but you are. You're an expert, man. Like, you're working in the professional game in a very, very niche area. right? Like there's very few people. There's lots of basketball coaches. There's very few people who do what you do. So I want to kind of ask you a few questions about, what playing free is, talk about anxiety a little bit, nervousness. So what is the difference in your opinion between an athlete who's nervous and an athlete who's like, hijacked by pressure? Is there a difference between that? Like,
Yeah, I think nervousness is normal,
mhm,
and it's I think a lot of athletes base how they're going to play on how they're feeling in the moment.
uh,
So if you can just start to understand that, all right, I may feel a sensation, or I may have a thought even creep into my mind, that's part of going into something that's unfamiliar, or living with the uncertainty that you're going to experience as a high level person, a high level player.
mm,
So I think the better you can approach these situations, and it takes training and patience with that non-judgmental awareness, that even before a game, if I feel jittery and I'm shaking, and the back of my neck is hot, you know I'm going to be okay. It's just, this is part of maybe my body getting ready, or part of the experience.
mm,
But the moment I start to rush into, okay, here it is, now I got to get into my breathing, now I got to get into this, I'm just reinforcing the anxiety and the panic, and the stuff that comes with it. Like, one story I'll share, that I've shared with a lot of different people, but I think it's pretty powerful, is like Mitch Creek. So Mitch Creek, he's been with the Bandits for 2 years. This past season, he just got league MVP. He's playing the NBA for multiple NBA teams under 10-day contracts. Played for the Australian national team. So really high level player. And the first season when I met him, I remember listening to him on his Instagram, and he said, I don't do meditations. I don't, I'll go crazy if I sit there for too long, kind of thing.
mhm,
And anyway, I kind of just said to him, hey, what do you think about doing a meditation? And he's really cool because he's super open minded. He'll try anything, and, he'll try it for a week. And if it doesn't align, then he'll maybe, move on to the next thing. But we started doing these meditations, and before a game, I look at him and his face would be beet red. You know, I could look at his neck, and you could see his neck, the heartbeat beating really fast. I'd dab him up after the handshake, and his hands would be all clammy.
mhm,
And then he'd go in the game, and he'd have, 33, 35 points, and absolutely dominate every aspect
mhm,
of it, playmaking, scoring, rebounding, defending, like dominate. And it just kind of proved the point of that. All right, some of the best players in the world still get nervous, or still feel those sensations. They're
mhm.
humans, but it's that he interprets those feelings differently than the next person. He doesn't panic and say
Uh,
something's going to go wrong, or this is the end
yeah.
of the world. I can feel it, and then I can deal with it. Now I can decide, all right, how do I want to respond? I don't need to rush into something. I don't need to bypass something that my nervous system isn't ready for,
Mm,
So sometimes that's learned through experience. And I think the athletes that get ahead of the game, and they don't necessarily need to hit rock bottom, those athletes have a real edge.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah. No, that's so true. It's like the how you interpret something or your belief around it will dictate a lot of how you respond to it um, as well.
Yeah. The, the,
That's
the
yeah.
the classic line that I talk to athletes about is, your story shapes
Mhm,
your state shapes perception, what you see, what information's
mhm,
available, and then your perception's going to shape your action, right? What kind of
mhm,
actions you can take. So if you're in a panic, anxious state of being, you know, physiologically, tunnel vision, I'm
mhm,
not going to pick up on certain things. Like, I can't read space properly. I don't
mhm,
see that I have someone wide open in the dead corner.
mhm,
And maybe it's just a simple one more. But if I'm regulated, if I'm in my body, if I'm present, if I'm available, all that stuff, it's a little bit
mhm,
smoother. And
mhm,
now I can take actions that, really bring out my greatness, bring out
Yeah.
all my skills.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that, man. Like a story that I've been telling myself for a while now is whenever there's like nervousness, it just means that I care, and that's awesome. Like let's go. Like I care about this versus it being like, oh no, like because you can make it your nervousness can turn into worry. But no, this is a good thing. I've like reframed it. This is good. It means I'm here. I'm invested in something that I actually care about. So I'm nervous about it. Like I opened up the podcast and I was like, man, I've done like we're getting to a close to 100. I talk to people all the time, like strangers, and I'm nervous about, jumping on a podcast and like messing up the intro. I care though. Like I'm really, so yeah, just
And
that
and
little
and
reframe though.
and what most players will say, I don't care. I don't really
Yes.
care that much. It's like, no,
Yes.
bro, I know you love this thing. I know this is
Yeah, you
important
really
to you.
care. Yeah, it's the exact
But
opposite.
I'm gonna push it away, push it
Yes.
down, avoid it.
Yes.
And then the moment I avoid it, what you resist will
Yeah.
persist.
Yeah.
Now it's gonna come in more intense.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's bang on, man.
Yeah.
100%. What do you, so obviously, I'm curious what your experience has been. If you had to, I know it's different for everyone, but what are some of the biggest triggers for pressure for athletes, whether they be pro, young? Because obviously there's expectations, there's minutes played, there's coaches, what they say they're it's the coaches holding me back, parents for young people, social media, identity. Is it something else? Like, what are those big triggers for pressure where you hear people telling you, like, no, I feel pressure because of this?
Yeah, I think generally just people get fixated on things that they can't control. Um,
Mm,
fixated on the coach's decision to play them or not play them, or sub them out for some reason. Maybe it's missing a few shots and worrying about how their mom or dad's going to perceive them. A
yeah.
lot of it, what I find really fascinating about it, it's just a lot of social dynamics, and the
Mhm.
relationships you have with people that you care about, and a lot of reframing. And as I was saying before, you know, the main thing that I help, especially pro players with is keeping perspective, like allowing them to vent, but noticing when it starts to now they're speaking about it and they're getting even more
Yeah.
emotional, and now it's building to the point of now we're just kind of reinforcing
Yeah.
this in your system.
Yeah.
So keeping the perspective, coming back a lot of times first to grounding, to the physical, come back to the physical, come back to the breath, come back to the body, um, come back to the weight of your body, come back to the temperature of the air as you breathe in and as you breathe
Mm,
out, the temperature, the warmth through your body. And then from that place, once we've grounded, now we can start to deal with, okay, what emotions are coming up? Now, once we've processed some of the emotions, I can talk it out. Like, I'm just feeling really angry, or I'm feeling really sad, or, you know, yeah, I'm just giving myself that space to work with it. So, physical, what am I feeling? Okay, heart rate is racing, mind is racing, body's tightening. What am I feeling? Okay, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling sad. Okay, cool. So, once we've taken a moment to deal with that, now we can logically have access to our prefrontal cortex
mm,
and make sense of this situation. What are the stories? What's actually true? But so many times when we get into these threat states with basketball, with people, maybe our girlfriend, boyfriend, our mom or our dad, we just jump right in the story. Well, you said this, and this is
mm,
what happened. And so I think, how do you get perspective back? How do you become more conscious in the situation? You come back to the physical, come back to the physical, come back to what you're experiencing emotionally.
mm,
Now we can deal with the mental. So I think
mm.
one of the questions you said earlier, like what's the thing that people don't understand maybe about mental performance, is people get trapped on just the mind and the stories. And sometimes we can just go deeper and deeper and deeper and sink into it instead of first just deal with the physical. Come back to the body. First thing.
Yeah.
Now we have something, as I've said a few times, I can stand on this, stable ground. Now I can start to see,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I love that because I've heard this through some meditation practice, and then also on the scientific side, some of the research that's been done literally about when you, let's say, something happens in the external world and you've developed a habitual response to it. Typically, it shows up physically, and then your conscious mind responds to the physical sensation with like anger, with sadness. And so what you're saying is like if you can identify that physical side and
Mhm.
realize what's happening, it can get you out of that emotional reaction, that like maybe the habit loop that you've been trained in based off of the external stimulus and that feeling in your body. Is that kind of what I'm hearing it?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I love that. So you talked about the high performing athletes. You talked about Mitch Creek, mindfulness. A lot of athletes hear that they're like he was literally on his podcast or his Instagram, like I don't do that. How do you frame it so like whether it's high level athletes or just like the general athlete, like so people buy into that? Like what's your frame? What are some of the things that you've tried to get people to understand so that they can buy into this?
Yeah, so the words that we use are important. There's certain athletes, if you say mindfulness or meditation, I don't want to
Yeah.
meditate,
Yeah.
then they may not respond to it, and they may shut down or say it's not for me. Or even if someone thinks that I'm a therapist, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to. So the framing is really important where someone says, okay, that could be for me. So my key a lot of times has been learning from the people around them, their parents or their friends, how they speak. If it's a professional player in our locker room, I'll just watch him and see what he's responding to. And then I'll do my best to meet him where he's at with it. There may be certain players, like for me, when I'm doing an intro call with somebody, I'll use Kobe and I'll talk about how Kobe, for example, when Kobe played Allen Iverson in 2001, there was a game Allen Iverson went off, and, and
Mm-hmm.
and had 41 points, 10 assists,
Mm-hmm.
dominated the game. And Kobe got a lot of harsh feedback, from the media and from everybody else. So one of the things that he did was he studied sharks. And in studying sharks, he started to better understand timing and angles. And defensively, he said he was a lot better because of that reason, studying sharks. They won the championship that year. So I say, okay, let's drop into that Mamba mentality and work with this. And so we'd watch maybe an animal video and learn how an animal is navigating stress. But because I said Mamba mentality,
Yeah.
most basketball players are going to respond to that.
Yep.
If I say, okay, let's lead with a meditation,
Yeah.
before we even do the meditation, they're already shut off and
Yeah.
I've lost them for the session. So there is a sensitivity that you need when you're integrating or working with this stuff. I think a lot of coaches are maybe out of touch or not taking the necessary steps to meet their players where they're at.
The Winnipeg Thunder turns the arena into
The Sea Bears get it done.
The incredible 88 straight wins by the Utes and the Brandon Bobcats have won.
You know the highlights, but do you know the stories behind the team? The Manitoba Basketball Hall of Fame and Museum preserves over 5,000 artifacts tracing the evolution of basketball in Manitoba. Located on the second level of the Duckworth Center at the University of Winnipeg, open daily with free admission. Learn more at mbhof.com.
Yeah, I think that's big time. And yeah, you throw Kobe in there, most of the guys are like, oh, mama, okay, cool. He's kind of like, whatever. If you just thought, hey, Kobe did this, people will start making documentaries. Kobe did documentaries, you can make them too. People are like, yeah, I want to do that. But I love that just of like the reframe and meeting them where they're at and on like a level they understand, right? You're not saying like, we're going to do a Zen Buddhist meditation. Because they're going to be like, what? We're not doing therapy, like they're going to be like, what? Like, no, I want to get good at basketball. What are you talking about? But when you reframe it and then you can implement some of those things, it's like super powerful. I love that. I really do. What do you think about This is difficult because like, you work with teams and stuff like that. So, I mean, answer as much as you feel comfortable with this one, but I'm so curious about what do you think that coaches accidentally do to like increase anxiety in players?
Good question. I'd say one of the things that comes up is not giving clear feedback, not really knowing how to deal with confrontation or
Mm,
understanding conflict resolution.
hmm
So a lot of times things just get swept under the rug or avoided, and then the athlete is kind of left to their own devices. And then naturally, what happens, how we're wired as humans, is we have a negativity bias. So if I
mm,
don't have clear feedback or I don't know where I stand, my brain is going to generate different stories to try to make sense of a situation. So it might
hmm
be, oh, well, coach doesn't trust me, or coach has favorites. And maybe he does, but and maybe those stories are true. But sometimes we leave our players in a position where, they can't succeed because we're not willing to make time for them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that when we do have a one-on-one conversation, your delivery can be perfect. They still may be upset because they're interpreting the information a certain way, but
mm,
it's still your responsibility to stay connected, especially when you're losing, especially in tough times, because
mm,
that's also something you're modeling. Like when they grow up, what are they going to do when there's tough times? Are they going to avoid those conversations? Are they not going to
hmm
want to sit down with people around them and let them know how it's going, or where they stand? So
Yeah.
I think it's like, obviously when you don't feel you have the skills, it's hard to do it. But you learn, you work with it, and then you're going to be a better coach for it. Your team's going to stay more connected and consistent throughout a season. And now your athletes, when they get in those situations, they'll be able to work with it, because there's also a lot of athletes, you know, they don't get to experience that at home, with their families.
Mm,
Sometimes it's a lot of yelling, or sometimes one parent will just storm off. So they may not see what healthy communication really looks like. So I think if there was one thing, I think that's what it would be for me, is
mm,
be consistent, communicate when there's fire, stay in the fire.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, man. I like the thing that where I put a pin on the thing that stood out was the when we don't have the information, our minds are built to create stories to fill that void, and that can take you anywhere. So it could be, and then if that continues over the long term, then you've created so many stories, or the story is very deep and you believe it, and then
Mhm.
yeah. So let's speaking of, you mentioned parents. What should a parent do or maybe stop doing if their kid is struggling with pressure? Like they're not performing, they're struggling. I'm sure you run into this type of stuff pretty
Yeah.
often.
Yeah, I'd say probably just listen more, um, not feel like you need to jump in and fix it, or even sometimes agree with the athlete that, hey, yeah, coach is a jerk, and you're getting screwed right now, and you should be playing more. Just listen. Like if you feel like it's unfair, the athlete
Mm,
feel it's unfair, can you just listen and give them the space to start to make sense of it, ask questions, and then from that place, they learn to think for themselves, and they can regulate and save themselves, not get caught in what we were saying, these stories, and then
mm,
spiral because of them, because of their own mind. So I think naturally it's tough for parents to do that, because they want their son or daughter to be successful.
hmm
I want them to have fun and enjoy this and not feel like they're suffering or this is painful. But you know it's kind of what you sign up for. Like there is going to be some pain, there is going to be some heartbreak in many different ways. And as we said from the beginning, it is a fantastic tool to
hmm
develop someone and help them prepare for what's next.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it's I'm not saying it's easy. Like, I'm not a parent by any means, but I think that's probably where I'd start. Just listen more. Sometimes too, like if there's too much venting, it's like, all right, let's give ourselves an amount of time, like 5 minutes of conscious venting.
Mm,
Say whatever you want, get it out of your system, talk about it, and then from there, come back to the body, come back to, okay, what can you focus on? What's actually going to help you in your next practice? What
mhm,
what is going to contribute to building your confidence and
mhm,
feeling good about the game.
mhm, mhm.
So
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so now if we take that to the next level here, there's a player listening and they're getting tight in games. Like they just each game they're tight, they're tight. What are the first three things you tell them to do this week, like leading into their next game? Like what's some advice you give?
yeah, probably one of the most basic things that they've probably already heard, but maybe they're ready for the message is having a routine, having something really simple,
Mhm,
and just doing it consistently the next week, the next 2 weeks. And it might be if you're feeling really anxious before a game, just move your body a lot, like jump up and down, shake your body out. Um, a lot of movement, maybe a little bit of breathing, breath work, and just stay with that, for the next week. And if you play like crap, okay. If you play amazing, okay. But we're not focused on how it goes in the game. We're letting that go. Come back to your process. You have something simple that you can just keep coming back to again and again, regardless of what's happening. That to me is how you're going to build real resilience and real confidence. Like within my program, I say it doesn't matter if you've had a tough week. It doesn't matter if it feels like the world is crumbling. We keep showing up on the call. Come to the call every week. You're gonna journal every week. Like I have my journal that I put out, Free Your Mind, right? Do your journal every day. It doesn't matter, and we're
mhm,
accountable to that process. You stay with this long enough, you're
mhm,
gonna get back to remembering who you really are. You know,
mhm, mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that, man. You funny. I saw your journal there, and a good friend of ours, former basketball player, no longer, but he has been posting on his social media now for 2 years that he's been meditating and journaling every day. And he told me how powerful that's been for exactly what you're explaining, right? Is like there's going to be ups and downs, but that's allowed him to really sit and understand and not again, in this case, feel tight in games, but feel tight in life, right? Where you feel like the world's ending and all that stuff. You could take and sit with those feelings and emotions, as you talked about earlier. It's feeling them and being like letting them pass and moving on. So it's really, really powerful. It's developing a routine around that. Now let's take that same thing and apply it to a coach. So now there's a coach listening and they want to build a team that, quote unquote, is more mentally tough. Like we'll use that as like a catch-all for, maybe some of the things that you've described at this point. What are three standards that they can implement like straight away?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one idea, uh, I guess you could call this standard. I've been working with a mix of teams here in North Vancouver, and 12-year-olds, 17-year-olds, and one of the simple things that we do before we start any practice is we breathe. So it's
Mm,
literally like, all right, everybody comes in for a moment. We're going to breathe together. So breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in and breathe out. And we talk about acknowledging the shift in your nervous system. Do you see how you felt one way as you were entering the gym and you were practicing, and now how you're feeling now? Can you notice the difference? And you know how sometimes you can feel fear in one moment or nervousness before a game. And then as the game gets going, you start to find your rhythm, you run up and down a few times. So things can shift. You don't get stuck in certain emotions. And one of the tools that you have is breathing. So just saying that, like how I said, you can frame it that way. And then every day when you come in, it could be 30 seconds, 60 seconds. You're just reinforcing that tool in all your practices.
mm,
Um, the other thing we've been working on and working on with our GM and head coach is language that the players can understand right away, because when there's chaos, when your nervous system's dysregulated, you don't have this mental bandwidth to make sense of all this feedback, right? You can tell me, I need to be in the drop and pick and roll, and then, out of the drop, I'm doing this and then doing this. And when you come into a timeout, we'll say gear down. And when we say gear down, I have a breathing system that I teach all of our pros. And it could be gearing down with your breath, but it also could be taking a moment for yourself to feel your feet in your shoes, wiggle your toes, rock back and forth. Just take a deep breath, fast in through the nose and then blow it out your mouth. You just do that one time. But gear down is like a menu of things that we've done through practices, pre-practices, before video. And it's on the athlete to know, okay, what do I need right now? All right, this is what I need. This is what I'm going to do. Coach is giving me 10, 15 seconds. Then from there, I can jump in and give them very specific feedback. Hey, when we're in this coverage, this is what it needs to look like. And then there's a greater chance of them actually being able to transfer that information when they return back to play. So I'd say even if it's 1 minute every day, something, that breathing, maybe it's a visualization. And the key with all the mental performance stuff is you're going to get tested from your players. You may have one kid laughing during the breathing. And then very easily I've seen some coaches snap and say, we'll take this seriously. And yell at them and get all upset. It's like, what just happened? You just lost it. You lost your center. So all this stuff, I don't care if you do breathing, you're not really about this. So to me, it's like a test from the universe. Like, are you really about mental performance? Are you really about mindfulness? Is this something that actually means something to you? Because if it does, this is an opportunity for training. If someone's laughing during, can you calmly manage that?
Yeah.
And maybe not calm, but can you be available in the moment? That might be a better way to put it. Instead of getting caught in your own ego and reactivity.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the game, is that there is going to be pushback. There's always going to be pushback from one or two or three people in the room, but it's just a test for you to stay in your center.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. No, it's cool. We touched on parents, players, coaches. I wanted to make sure I asked you a question about all those, because there's just so much to it. Like, again, this is a people game, right? And just everything you've talked about has been a human experience. I mean, we've not really talked about, the game of basketball at all, which for me, the older I get, the more I love this type of stuff. And I'm hoping that this is, maybe opening some eyes to some people, or giving them that little nudge to look at some stuff that's like a little bit different. So I wanted to ask those specific questions, but we got to getting close to the end here. So I want to ask you a more a big picture question, and you've given us so much already, but I like to frame it this way, John. So you're back in Basketball Manitoba, you're at Sport Manitoba building, or whatever it's called now, provincial team. Dan said, "Hey, John, would love to have you come talk to all the the Canada Games teams or the provincial team, whatever." And you're sitting in the room, and they're all there in front of you, right? All the athletes, the coaches are there as well, managers. And, they're like, "Hey, you got 45 minutes, to do your, your speech or whatever." The problem is we know this, is that people tend not to, like, you could say all of these great things, but they're not going to walk away remembering everything you say.
Yeah.
So, taking that, hypothetical situation, you're in front of all these athletes. What is 1 to 3 things that you would want them to walk away and understand if you were in that situation?
I'd say you have more control than you think you do when you focus on the right things. So, for example, if you can learn breath control, that's going to solve probably 80% of your challenges with anxiety, nervousness, fear. Getting caught in story.
Yeah.
I think it's challenging to see because, and I feel a certain way about it. People are getting caught in, maybe feeling like they don't have it, like they need something outside of them to solve it. It's like you already have everything you ever could need. It's right here. And I think just learning to start to get yourself in tune with your breath and being patient with it, is something that's really powerful. So if I was in front of that group of people, I would get them doing the exercises.
Mm.
And now, because you can actually experience it, you have a direct experience with the material. Wow. Now I get this
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
But if we just talk about it like this, and I say, wow, it's so important for you, you gotta do your meditations, you gotta do some breath work, most people won't get it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's bang on, man. I love that. Um, you may not know all the science, but you'll know more than the layperson. Talk to me or to explain why specifically the breath from a physiological standpoint is like, why is that such an important thing to focus in on when it comes to like controlling your physiological state?
So the simplest thing that I can tell people is a lot of times athletes get caught in chronic mouth breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you're breathing in the upper parts of your lungs, your body's releasing cortisol and adrenaline, and you can put yourself into fight or flight. You can induce panic and anxiety. But the moment you start to breathe a little bit lower, a little bit slower, a little bit deeper, your body starts to release cooling, calming chemicals like dopamine and serotonin. So if my body can start to relax, my mind can become more available or focused on the task at hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's finding these moments, within a game. You may have 60 moments of stoppages, when you're running to the bench or when coach is about to talk to the team before the game, or it's halftime and you're there by yourself with the team and you're waiting for the coach, or you're in the dead corner and you've just ran out of transition and the ball's in the backcourt and you have 5 seconds. Those moments of recovery where you can breathe fast in through your nose and then blow out a little bit of pressure through your mouth, that's a reset. That's pattern disruption. That's going to reinforce a state of focus, of
Mm-hmm.
performance, instead of a state of threat or
Mm-hmm.
fear. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's like the breath is like one of the, I guess you can control your heart rate, especially if you're deep in meditation and you can do things like that. But like to literally control it in the moment, like I can hold my breath right now. I can blow out super fast, right? I can inhale super fast. I can do long exhales. There's all these different things. And it's one of the few or if I can just sit here and talk with you, I'm going to breathe without thinking of it. So it's one of those few that we can actually like tune into. So it's like so cool when you start playing with it.
And to build on your point, if you're perceiving a situation as fear, your breathing's naturally going to change. It's going to get harder to breathe. You're going to have a lower, what they call CO2 tolerance. So for you to be able to have a longer exhale or to practice a breath hold is going to be more challenging when you're in the game. Right now, as we're speaking, there's no pressure. There's not really a lot of information, but you step into the gym, fans are yelling. There's all this stimulus, coaches, maybe anxious and uptight and acting a certain way. All right, breath is changing. Just noticing that your breath is changing.
Yep.
All right, okay, cool. And when I have that kind of breath awareness and I'm patient with this process of slowing it down again, then real change, real confidence can come from those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. I love it. What's next for you, brother? Like, what are you building? I know you got Play Free. Are you working on any other projects? Yeah, I know you have the journal that you put together. That was a whole project. Professional basketball. What's next in the fold for you? What are you working on?
Yeah, I'd say just keep serving the people in my community at a high level. So people either with Play Free that I work with one-on-one. I do like an intro call, and that could, if anybody's listening and they're interested to learn more, that's a cool way to kind of work with me. The journal is a really good foundation. It's a 90-day system that you can start working on. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, third season with the Vancouver Bandits, really excited. Everybody's super amped up. We've got a lot of big signings, a lot of big players that we're anticipating joining the roster this season. So just a lot going on there, and I'm excited to like work with those guys and keep helping them grow, not only with us but long after our season. So just chipping away day by day. Loving the process.
Yeah, I love it, brother. I love it, man. I appreciate you taking the time, and I know the Vancouver Bandits are an unbelievable organization. Because they're on this podcast, I have to say it, man. It would be really cool to see you back home one day, doing what you do with the home team, because I'm there all summer and I would love to be able to be there in the summer with you and stuff like that. And so I wish you obviously all the luck with the Bandits, but I think it'd be really cool one day if you could kind of go full circle, and come back. Yeah. So I throw that out there. It's just that'd be pretty cool. Not that I you need to do it or I want you to do it, but I think it'd just be a really cool moment. In my humble opinion. So
yeah, thanks, man.
Yeah, I know you're like, man, I live in North Vancouver, bro. Like, calm down. It's beautiful. I definitely, no offense, trust me, I know I used to live there, so I get it. But I say that, man, just because I talk to so many people in the basketball community, and you've been such an influential person, and you will continue to be. And we come from Manitoba. We're in this podcast, and I know you're available online to people and stuff like that. But I just think it'd be really cool to have you in the community again, man. Because it's like it's just, we may move on from it, but we always we're here on this podcast. I'm there half the year, and I'm not even involved in basketball besides this podcast now. But Manitoba is still special. I saw you there this winter. We come home all the time, so. I'm so proud of you and where you've gone and the work you're doing. But selfishly, I would love to see you be able to, still have some connection, because you're in the CEBL anyways, right? So anyways, I'll leave it there, brother. I'll leave it there. But I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you having me, Darcy, and having a conversation like this. I think, these conversations keep moving the game forward, hearing multiple perspectives and then helping people, as we said, think for themselves. Yeah. How do you want to coach the game? What's really important to you? What impact do you want to have? So, any way I can support anybody from Winnipeg, I'm always about it. So.
Yeah. Well, you heard it. So if you're listening right now and you want to talk to John, hey, reach out. Find him on Instagram and all that good stuff. But no, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much for taking the time to this podcast.
Thanks, Darcy.
Hey, brother.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this series, and reach out to us with your comments on the show. Thanks again for joining us.